And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us once again across the Louisiana plain, where we are elevating the cause of constitutional conservatism in Louisiana, elevating the cause of constitutional conservative citizens across the state, and rapidly now draining the Louisiana swamp. My name is Chris.
And I'm Danielle, and this is the State of Freedom, brought to you by freedom-loving Louisiana First Patriots. Hello, State of Freedom warriors. Thank you for inviting us to be part of your day. We are so grateful for you. You're the best listening family anyone could possibly hope for, and we are only here because of your encouragement, your prayers, and your financial support. If you are looking for a way to support us, to advertise with us, or to send us feedback, please visit our website at freedomstate.us. We'd really appreciate it if you'd also help us get the word out and spread the reach of the State of Freedom. Please like the show on whatever platform you listen to us, subscribe to it, and share it. You can share short clips instead of the full episodes from our YouTube and Rumble channels, and links to those are always in the show notes and over on freedomstate.us. Today, we have the honor and privilege to be speaking with a true American warrior and hero. He's a personal hero of mine and so many who love this country. I'm so humbled and thrilled that we will be speaking with General Michael Flynn. Before we get into the discussion with General Flynn, let me read the scripture of the day. It's Psalm chapter 5, verses 3 through 7. And it says, "At each and every sunrise, you will hear my voice as I prepare my sacrifice of prayer to you. Every morning, I lay out the pieces of my life on the altar and wait for your fire to fall upon my heart. I know that you, God, are never pleased with lawlessness, and evil ones will never be invited into your house. Boasters collapse, unable to survive your scrutiny, for your hatred of evildoers is clear. You will make an end of all those who lie. How you hate their hypocrisy and despise all who love violence. But I know that you will welcome me into your house, for I am covered by your covenant of mercy and love. So I come into your sanctuary with deepest awe to bow and worship and adore you." And the title of this psalm in the Passion Translation is The Song of the Clouded Dawn. And I just think that's so beautiful because it shows that things were not always clear to King David, but he was committed to the discipline of loving and communing with the Lord, regardless of what he could see and regardless of the circumstances. It was this time in the presence of the Lord that David was strengthened. And that's where he could see clearly that the Lord is never pleased with lawlessness, evil, and hypocrisy. It's in that place of communing with the Lord that he was reminded and could see clearly through the fog that the Lord's covenant of mercy and love covered him.
That's very, very powerful.
Yeah, let me reflect on that a little bit with you guys, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's really important for people to understand that there's so many things that are stated in the Bible that are part of who we are today. And one of the things about David as a child, before he became a king, is preparation, not necessarily understanding. You know, children don't understand everything. They just sort of go with the flow sometimes. And I think what that talks about, that beautiful chapter 5 that you just talked about, it really talks about a greater understanding of what is happening and who we are. But when you go back to the child of David, what we have to do, and we're all like this right now in America, we are in a place where we have to prepare. And I think preparation, a lot of people don't realize that to get to the level where you're going to stand up against a giant. Now, the metaphor was a giant, but there was actually large people that lived in that time, right? And there was great warriors, and they wore lots of armaments and stuff like that, and it made them look and appear bigger on a battlefield, right? And so as a young boy, he stands against it, not totally understanding, but having faith enough in his preparation. And his preparation was not only in the Lord, but his preparation was in his skills, right? If you think about what he did was as a kid in that area, that part of the desert, right? It's a sort of a rocky, hilly desert area. And he loved to be able to do slingshots, right? But he was always one that carried stones that were always prepared. It's the idea of preparation. And I think I want Americans to understand that we are in a period of preparation where we have to prepare our strength, We have to prepare our courage. We have to prepare our fearlessness. We have to prepare our determination. We have to get ourselves ready again, once again, as a nation built on, on principally Christian values and principles. And we need to be prepared to stand our ground against these forces of evil. I mean, there's no doubt that we're in a spiritual war. There's no doubt that it's an intellectual war. There's no doubt that it's an emotional war. I mean, all the things that are going on around us today in it's sort of the world of current affairs, wars over in the Middle East, wars in Europe, wars on our southern border, wars in our cities with crime, rising, wars in our own government against each other, right? Look at what they're doing to former, President Donald J. Trump. So this nation is, for those of us like you and I, and the many others that I believe are believers, that we have to prepare better. We have not prepared enough. And I think we need to sharpen our minds. We have to sharpen our knowledge, right? It means we got to go and dig in. We got to listen to people. We have to open our ears to hear what people are saying, not just hear noise, but listen for what it is that they're saying. And I think that particular scripture, I don't know, that's kind of what I got out of that. I got that out of that, and I found it beautiful. And because we're in a place now, folks, that for you guys and in your your wonderful audience, where are you guys based out? Are you based out of Louisiana?
Yes.
Yeah. So I used to live in Louisiana. So maybe, I don't know, maybe some of your audience is in Louisiana. I used to live in Leesville. You know where Leesville is on the west side of Louisiana, over there by the Toledo Bend Basin.
Yep.
I forget the highway that used to cut through it. The highway.
Absolutely. General Flynn, I'm from Shreveport, Louisiana, which is not too far from Leesville. We used to have a camp on the Texas side of Toledo Bend, so I know it very well. I did not know that you lived there. And how long did you live in Leesville?
Yeah, I was there for 2 years. I was assigned to Fort Polk, Louisiana. My children actually went to Leesville Junior High and Leesville Elementary. I used to love the Catfish Junction. I think that was the only restaurant other than like McDonald's, Fish Junction.
Oh yeah, nothing fried in that. Nothing fried in that place.
Oh my God, I love that place. We'd go there. I trained. I was a senior trainer for our military at the time. I was a young lieutenant colonel as my rank then. But anyway, because there's a lot to be said about. I actually wrote a book many years ago called Field of Fight, and in it I describe my time at Fort Polk, Louisiana. I used to call it Snake Central, because there was so many snakes down there. A lot of, I don't know what kind of snakes of all kinds. There were definitely gators. And there was a place called, I don't know why I'm going into this, but I just am, because I love Louisiana.
It's a great, General Flynn, I want to tell you that, when I went to school up in the Midwest for college at the University of Missouri, Kansas City, I used to actually get those Midwestern boys to believe that on the weekends, just for fun, we would go down to the bayou and ride alligators. And they actually believed us. And so, boy, let me tell you what, we were 10 foot tall and bulletproof up there to those guys.
I'll bet.
But General Flynn, I want to ask you something that you touched on just then, alludes to. When you talk about being prepared for battle and being trained and having courage, I've heard you talk before about some of the more sinister elements that are permeating the United States military now. What are your thoughts on what is occurring within the military now? And I'll take it that probably is not contributing very robustly to our ability to be prepared and to have courage and stay focused.
Yeah.
Some of the wokeism in the military.
Yeah. And our military serves one purpose, and that is to fight and win our nation's wars, right? So our military is supposed to be trained, ready, prepared in a variety of ways for a variety of consequences to fight and win. And that's in most mission statements for most units, for our military, fight and win our nation's wars, right? And it's not to participate in these endless, useless, losing battles and conflicts and wars that we've been involved in forever, for decades. So what is permeating into our military, and it really starts at the top, down. It's sort of being driven top down. But I would say that there is an element in our education system that's growing the young men and women in our country, teenagers, and that are those who we want to join our military. And our country has like ripped the masculinity. They've sort of demasculated men in society, particularly young men. We've got all these young kids that think that transgender is cool, and it's just crazy. But this issue that you're talking about, Chris, is that this idea of it's top-down driven, and this enforcement of things like diversity, equity, and inclusivity, critical race theory, the idea of social emotional learning. The military is not a social experiment. It should not be experimented with for social programs that that some administration, in this case, this administration, wants to test on the military and then enforce on the rest of society. And what they'll do is they'll say, well, see, our military does it, so it must be okay. That's what we are seeing. That's what's happening. And this shift in the culture of our military to demasculate our military. I said earlier there, just a minute ago, fight and win. We need warriors. We need champions. We need heroes. We need men and women, young men and women principally, who are ready and they're trained and they're well led and they feel empowered. They're confident in themselves. They're confident in their abilities to be able to use the weapon systems that they're being trained on. All these things. Now, all that said, there are people in our military, particularly, I would say, in the mid grades, the sergeants, the Navy chiefs, the chief petty officers, the gunnies that are in our Marine Corps. I mean, there's still a sufficient number who are able to hold on. They're sort of holding the line, so to speak, but they're also following orders of their leadership, right? And in this case, they're uniformed leaders, because the policies from the civilian leaders are basically trying to I think that they're trying to destroy our, the last bastion of integrity that we have in America, which is our uniformed military. I really do believe that they're trying to destroy it.
Yeah. General Flynn, we had a young man, I believe he was a lieutenant, Mark Bashaw, on our show, distinguished military career, very, very outstanding young man in the U.S. Army. And he told us about the protocol that the military implemented regarding the COVID shot, the experimental COVID vaccine. And it was quite alarming to hear his story and to hear the way the top brass responded to that epidemic and the way that they imposed that shot on the rank and file soldiers and just the effect that had on the lives of so many soldiers. I don't know if you are at liberty to talk about that, but what are your thoughts in retrospect on the way the military responded regarding the COVID shot and all of those draconian medical protocols that were imposed upon those soldiers?
Yeah, I think the Secretary of Defense and I think some of the more senior people that we have running our services, the Chief of Naval Operations, the Commandant of the Marine Corps, the Chief of Staff of the Army, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, the Chief of Staff of the Air Force, they all ought to apologize for what they did. Now that we know what we know, I mean, the vaccine has killed people. One data point in the Army, the rise of prostate cancer that should really only affect guys like my age, the rise of prostate cancer in 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds in the Army is astronomical. So that's not a data point. I'm not making it up. And it's not a data point that we ever had to worry about with 20 and 30-year-olds, right? But the only common denominator are the vaccines. So, yeah, so it had a devastating impact. It had a devastating effect. There should be reinstatement. I mean, the military tried to they did a lousy job with this, letter that came out to if you want to come back in, we'll let you back in. It was poorly done, poorly executed, poorly led. And that's sad because we pushed out men and women. We in some cases, under less than honorable conditions, pushed people out because they refused the order using their religious exemptions to take the vaccine. They were forced out by their chains of command. So anyway, I just find that really terrible. And we have a responsibility to reach back out to them and help them. Many of them left over a year ago, 2 years ago. They can't come back and they got new lives. Their families are taking off on a different tack. I mean, we hurt the men and women in our military, which should be the most prized people in our country are men and women serving in the United States military who are willing to give their lives for our country. So,
in general, keeping on the theme of the men and women who are giving their lives to protect us, Louisiana was among the states that sent troops to the border in Texas, National Guard. And we saw, obviously, yesterday that El Paso, our troops were overrun by the invasion at the border. There's reports that our troops were not armed. Do you have any reason to believe that that's true? And are our troops really being sent there just to fail?
yeah. So, and I understand, I found out earlier today that a couple of those people in that video they were not only overrun, they were stomped on, and they were put into a position that they should not have been put into. That was a poor decision, how that barrier of National Guard soldiers was put up there, and they were put in what we call an untenable position. And when it became mob rule, they were outnumbered. And I understand that there's a couple of those individuals that were seriously injured. So thank God I didn't hear of anybody getting killed. I wouldn't have been surprised based on what we saw, what we witnessed. So, yes, this is an invasion. We're putting our men and women who are, they're volunteers, folks. I mean, these are people, and they're being asked to go down and defend our border against an invading force. This is not a game. This is very serious. So anyway, I think that the rules of engagement. What can I do if I'm a soldier put in a position like that? What can I do? What are the rules that I have to be able to defend myself, to be able to protect myself? And the leadership that wherever they were, there's no way in the world that the rules of engagement were clear. They're probably written by some lawyer, and they're probably in legalese, and God knows if those soldiers were actually trained on those things. That to me is a breakdown in leadership, and it's something that should never happen with our men and women. So I feel bad for those soldiers. I question their leaders. A couple of them were injured. And now what are we going to do? So that happened. The world saw it. We're like a laughing stock around the world as to how we're allowing our border, our country, to be invaded by a bunch of hooligans and by a bunch of thugs, So anyway, I actually felt terrible. I felt terrible.
Yeah. General Flynn, what would you do? Well, two questions. Have you ever been in a situation where, to me, it's inconceivable that we would have military personnel on the border facing what you accurately described as an invasion and be unarmed? That seems incomprehensible to me.
I'm excited to share a fantastic opportunity for State of Freedom listeners who are interested in investing in precious metals or even starting a home-based business in the precious metals industry. Metal Stacks is a precious metals collectors club where you can buy your metals at the best prices on the market, actual dealer cost. They are beating the big sites. They have no credit card fees and no minimums. If you're just interested in purchasing metals at a great price, visit metalstacks.com/dwalker. Get to shopping. That helps me out. I get the commission. You can also refer people to Metal Stacks for an additional income. If you're interested in learning about the referral business aspect of Metal Stacks, email me directly at danielle@freedomstate.us for more information.
So go back, and I want your audience and you guys go back and look at the video and see if they don't even have like face shields on. They don't have protective shields. They don't have batons for what we would typically use for riot control, or when you're standing a line. If you look at a line of police officers in any of the riots that we had against Antifa in the I call it the summer of love, in the summer of 2020, the police officers will line up. They'll have their face shields on because people are going to throw bricks, they're going to throw rocks, they're going to spit. You're going to have your shields on, you're going to have your batons to push back, and you train on riot control. It doesn't even appear to me that those soldiers were trained on any of those things. I didn't see any of that kind of equipment. Now, I might have missed it in the video, but I don't think I saw it. And it didn't seem like they had, it didn't seem like they operated as one element, as one team. They were kind of like pushing back, and then all of a sudden the concertina wire was ripped down, the little fence was ripped down, and they just rushed them. And it was mob rule. And we cannot have that. We cannot put our men and women in that kind of a position any longer. We can't. We train on riot control. We train our National Guard. We train our reserves. We train our active forces on these kinds of things before we put them into a line where they're going to be in a place where that could likely happen. The likelihood of that happening was very high. In the military, you do what's called a risk assessment. And when you do a risk assessment, you then assess all the things that you're probably going to encounter or face, and then you put in place the measures to be able to mitigate that risk, to lessen the risk. I didn't see that at all. And I know it's one incident, and it's a 30 or 45 second or a minute long video, but I didn't see any of that. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, are we like this across the board? Is this a reflection of our entire military? I hope not. I pray not.
Yeah. Now we don't have federal troops there, General Flynn, do we? These are all state National Guard troops that are on the border now. Is that right?
Well, yeah. I mean, they're all soldiers that have joined the service. Now, if they're National Guard and they they're in the states, right? And states have sent them, they can be federalized by the federal government at a moment's notice, right? So, these are not supposed to be untrained people, right? These are supposed to be. And before you put somebody in a position like that, I mean, God help them. At least spend 24 hours back in a safe area and do some basic training. Do some training on riot control, on formations, on shoulder-to-shoulder locking. I mean, basic things that would have helped that untenable position that they were put in. So I hope that that's not a reflection of the larger force that we have that's down there protecting our border. Obviously, they weren't able to do it, and I don't want to put the burden on them. It's because of the scale of the problem. The scale of this problem at the border is out of control. Our federal government is intentionally allowing the destruction of our country by allowing millions and millions and millions of hordes of thugs, prisoners, and psychopaths into our country from over 160 countries now. I think it's close to 170 different countries from around the planet. I mean, there's only like 192 countries, right? I mean, total. This is insane. This is insane. And you have to say why. And people go, well, they want more votes. The Democrats want more votes. I don't think so. I don't think that's the big reason. I think the big reason is to come in here, destroy our country, purposely change the culture of our country to something that we don't recognize. And, now the globalists step in and take over. These world bodies like World Health Organization, World Trade Organization, World Bank, United Nations, the Chinese Communist Party. I'm not kidding. I'm not a guy making stuff up here. I know this. This is my life. National security of this country has been my life. This is what we're facing. I'm sorry I'm going on and on about it, but this is a very serious situation and very serious time in our country. And I want your audience to understand that.
It is a serious time, for sure.
And General Flynn, at the outset of the show, you mentioned that we're in a spiritual war. And we're in a spiritual war, and it feels like those wars are kind of happening on different fronts. There's the information war, there's a narrative war, there's legal wars that we're watching play out in real time. We've all been party to the biological war. I'm sure you can name a lot of other fronts. But I've heard you say several times recently that you think we're winning. Would you give us some encouragement? How do you know we're winning? What are some markers, some events that you've seen that point to the fact that we're winning? And what's it going to take to really crush the head of this spiritual leviathan that we're facing?
Yeah, it is a good versus evil, truth versus lies, light versus dark. I mean, this is the times that we're in. And the reason why I believe we're winning, it's kind of like a beachhead, right? Like the Normandy beach invasion, right? So we've attacked the beaches. We have secured the beaches. We have secured the high ground. We have broken through the hedgerows of Normandy Beach, right? And we've done that with people like you two guys, okay? We've done that with so many of the really strong social media platforms that do exist. We've done that with so many great, what I call digital soldiers, right? Citizen journalists, warriors out there like you guys, and expanding our voices across this country, across this great country, to get people to realize all of these challenges. Because people see it in their communities. They see it when they go to buy a loaf of bread, when they go to fill up their gallons of gas. Everything's more expensive. I mean, egg prices are up like 3, or I think it's 5 times now for one egg, right? I mean, it's crazy. So people are seeing it and feeling it in their lives. But I do believe now more and more people are getting involved in their communities. We've overturned a lot, I think a couple of hundred county school boards. We have court cases that we have been fighting for years that we are now seeing the results of those court cases overturning things. Like we just recently saw the federal court, talking about the use of ivermectin as an example, right? These are big deals. We have another court case inside of the Supreme Court now that has to do with overall election security, because we now know that we have clear evidence that shows a foreign power interfered in the 2020 elections. Now, does that mean that they're going to be overturned? No. It just means that we know, and we only know this because there have been those of us who have continued to raise our voices, continued to stand our ground, continued to seek out congregations, okay, like your pastors. I'm a pastor in one respect, right? And our congregation is our listening audience, because too many churches around this country have been led by weak people, weak pastors who refuse to talk about. They want to keep the separation of state and church. That's not how our country was built. Our country was, the very first part of the First Amendment, people think of the First Amendment as the freedom of speech. The very first part, there's 5 parts of the First Amendment. The very first part has to do with freedom of religion. When our founders argued about every single right that we have, and they argued about the very first one, they argued the very first component had to be freedom of religion, to practice our religion, because they were men who believed in a creator. They were men who based our country's constitution and our rules of law on biblical principles. And those biblical truths, those are promises that we make to each other. And the fulfillment of those promises are found in our Constitution, just like the fulfillment of the promises of the 10 Commandments are found in the Bible. So we're doing this. Not to say that there aren't great, brave pastors out there. There's a few, and I know a few, but there's not enough. And I think more and more are now starting to see the light and saying, we're going to stand our ground. We have got to stand up. And it's not about being in a church and talking about, you got to vote for this person. I got that. I understand that. But it's about voting for an issue, voting for our country, voting for patriotic American principles. That's what we need to have. That's the spiritual war. That's why I feel like we're winning, because we have more and more. My message to you today is that. My message to your audience today is that we have people all across this country that are now believing like I believe, and seeing for what I see, and understanding what I understand. And they weren't 2 or 3 years ago. They really weren't. They were kind of, yeah.
Yeah, that is so true. And one of the reasons, General Flynn, why people are beginning to see and understand, one of the examples is your movie that is coming out now. We are so glad here at the State of Freedom to now be involved with it and to be an affiliate partner with you on your movie, Flynn, Deliver the Truth, Whatever the Cost. What a great, great name. We have a few minutes left here. Will you tell our listeners about your movie and what inspired you to make it?
Yeah, it's a lifetime of experiences, but really what happened to me should never happen to anybody else. And it still is, though. So the movie, flynnmovie.com. I really appreciate you guys being an affiliate. And I hope that your audience, you can sign up. If nothing more, just sign you can get in there. You can go on the website, flynnmovie.com, sign up, and we'll give you notices about upcoming events that we're going to have on there. We have a tour schedule. I'm going to go to 33 cities in 55 days around this country starting April 5th. I'll finish it up on Memorial Day. The movie is really in 2 parts. The first part is about my military experiences. It's fascinating. And it's kind of like a why me at the end was I able to get to where I got, but why did they start to turn on me? And then the second part is really about the persecution that not only my family and I went through, but America went through. And then the last little piece of it is about where do we find hope? It is a story of survival. It's a story of emotions. I think people are going to meet my family. I have a large family. Tucker Carlson is in it, plays a prominent role. Devin Nunes plays a prominent role because those are two people who I know very well. They're good friends, and they have a perspective that I think people need to hear. We have members of my legal team in it. You are going to see and hear things that you've never heard before. I've never talked about them, only in this movie. Flynnmovie.com. And on the DVD side, you can order DVDs from either the Walmart or Target or Amazon. And if you order a DVD, on the DVDs, there are B-roll. Like there's 4 more hours of really, really phenomenal taping that we did of Tucker Carlson, Devin Nunes, myself, and Lee Smith, who also plays a prominent role. Lee Smith is a best-selling author, wrote the book The Plot Against the President that was turned into a documentary. And that's a great documentary. It came out about 4 or 5 years ago. So that's what the movie's about. I think people will be blown away, and I think people will be inspired. Bring your tissues, because I guarantee there's moments of real, just unbelievable things. You're going to go, oh my God. And then there's moments there's other emotions that will kick in to people, but I want people to leave after watching it from their homes or from a theater or from a church, wherever you watch it. I want people to leave and say, what must I do now as a citizen of this country? We cannot have this again. We cannot stand for this. And they're still going after Trump, and they're still going after me, and they're still going after Trump. And this movie, the timing of it, so if you just give me 30 more seconds, the timing of it is really, really important because it's coming out now purposely on this timeline, because our country is at a sort of a Psalm 23 position where, yea, that I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. And I want people to understand that my family and I particularly, but my wife and I particularly, we lived in the valley of the shadow of death, but we did not fear the evil that was around us because we knew our faith was so strong together and we were able to come out of it. And now that we came out of it, I feel like a responsibility to go back in and help America understand where we're at and help us all get out of this mess that we're in.
Amazing. Well, General Flynn, if you'd like to add one more city to your tour, you're most welcome in Louisiana. We'd be happy to get out the word on that and help get a crowd there.
Yeah. What cities are you guys near? I used to be up in Alexandria, and I love Louisiana. I love it. That's a great state.
I'm way down south, so I'm on the bayou in Houma.
Oh, yeah, I know that area. I used to have a friend down there who worked for Schlumberger, and he was a oil rig guy. And I went down there and visited him way down there one time, south
Yep.
of Nolens, and he was way down.
Nolens.
I didn't think that people live that far down, but they do.
We do. We get carried around by mosquitoes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. General, we really do, but that's only when we're not riding alligators.
Yeah.
General Flynn, I want to two things. One's on a lighter note, and then I want to ask you one final, more serious question. Whenever you do your sequel, will you remember the State of Freedom? Because we want to be on it. We'll even camp out, spend the night, get up early, and show up early. So just remember, if you need a couple of fill-ins for your sequel, make sure that you remember the State of Freedom here. Would you do that?
Absolutely. And I want you guys to reach out to Melissa, who set this up for me. I appreciate you guys doing that.
Yeah.
Reach out to her, find out where we're at on the tour. And maybe if we're someplace close, even a couple hours away, you guys let me know and you come over and be my guests.
That would be awesome. We'll absolutely do it. Thank you.
We will do that. And I have the last question here, General Flynn. People look at you, they look at your life, they look at the courage that you've shown under enormous pressure. When I look at you, I think of the Old Testament when God said that I will purify you in the furnace of affliction. And I think that absolutely describes you. And I want to ask you, for the benefit of our listeners, what is it on a deep, fundamental level? I know that you've talked about courage and the importance of it, but those are really outward manifestations of inward steadfastness. What is it on the core level, if you had to say, that has sustained you during the darkest of times and that has given you the strength that you just habitually display for all the world to see? What is it?
Yeah, well, I would say that I am an imperfect man, but I have such a deep faith in God. And it's overwhelming at times. And I will tell you that, I mean, even right now, it's a very intimate part of my life, but it's a powerful element of what I respect. And I think in fact, I know that's it. At the end of the day, that's what has given me the fiber and the strength to withstand everything that I have experienced. I am only a human, and all of us have a threshold, and God has given me a threshold that He's allowed me to understand. And I think that's probably the best way I can describe it.
Well, what you've done, General Flynn, resonates with millions in the United States and across the world. But more importantly, your courage resonates in eternity. And that is a fact. And that is where your treasure is stored up. And as Jesus said, we store not our treasure on earth, but in heaven. And you are a magnificent example to millions. And we love you. And we are so proud in our own small way to fight in the same foxhole that you're fighting in. And God bless you, sir, and Godspeed. And when you get down here to Louisiana, you don't have to worry about calling us. We'll show up.
I love it. I love it. Thank you, guys. And thank you for your patience. Thank you for juggling your schedule around. Thank you to your audience, your great audience. And man, I can eat some crawdads, that's for sure.
Well, we'll have plenty of them for you. And then I'll get the leash. There's a certain way we do it when we ride the alligators, General. And so I'll make sure that I give you a little training seminar on that. It'll only take an hour or so.
All right, guys. God bless you. See ya.
Take care.
All right.
Good to talk to you.
Take care. God bless you. Thank you.
Yeah, you too.
Thanks for listening to The State of Freedom. To stay on top of all the calls to action we mentioned today, just check out the show notes for the episode. If you'd like to support the show financially, visit our website at freedomstate.us. If you'd prefer to give by mail, you can send a check to The State of Freedom, LLC at P.O. Box 861, Berg, Louisiana 70343. If you own a business in Louisiana and are interested in supporting our show by advertising, please email us at info@freedomstate.us. To get involved with Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, visit lacag.org, LACAG.org, or email Chris at chris@lacag.org. If you're enjoying the podcast, please subscribe and share it. Give us a 5-star rating in the reviews. Thanks again, everybody. We'll see you next time.